So first thing this morning, when we had the panel with a selection of smaller operators, we heard kind of some stories of what cinemas were attempting to do to grow audiences, to reach out to the community, to eventize, and do all manner of things to tackle some of the challenges that cinemas face in the modern world. We can't get enough of those kind of stories. We're a very broad church as an organisation, and when James and I and Maria and other colleagues go across the country every 6 months, we're always struck by the enthusiasm, the ingenuity and innovation that we see from all of our members, large and small. So we want to spend a little bit more time today just with one case study on a particular venue. Dan Westgarth from the Station Cinema Richmond has appeared on a panel here in the last couple of years, but we thought we'd give him the floor to himself to talk about the Station Cinema Richmond, North Yorkshire, not the one in West Posh London, and talk a little about what that cinema has done in terms of growing audiences and growing its footprint in the community. Dan, the floor's yours.
I mean this in the nicest way. You all look a lot less scary sitting that way than you do looking up this way. So today I'm just going to talk about the wonderful world of community engagement and specifically how it's related to us growing audiences, old and new, and specifically the various ways that we've done this. And I suppose looking at some of our slides that are coming up, it might just look like a slightly grand way of saying that once we decided to let some dogs in, the BBC turned up. But what we have done in the last few years is experience spending time building those new and keeping our existing audiences and seeing positive results. And we didn't really set out to start off with community engagement. We just started saying yes to things. And it turns out the skills involved are the ones that we all already have. So this is a talk about finding audiences in your community that you may not have seen before and what happens commercially when you do. Made that mistake. So just a little bit of context for those of you who do not know who we are. We have 3 screens. We're based in a beautiful, restored former Victorian railway station in Richmond, North Yorkshire. And we are a proper Yorkshire venue. When you come into the car park, there's a farmer's field with sheep and lambs there at the moment. And you can always find our staff after work in the local pub. We're owned and operated by a charity, and that matters because we sit in quite an unusual position. We're not for profit, but we're heavily commercial in our goals. We don't have any other form of funding apart from ourselves, so we have to make our own way pay. If we do not bring in audiences and we do not sell things like popcorn, the whole thing suffers. So what we're going to discuss with community engagement is that for us, it isn't just a nice to have, it has to pay its way. And it does, but not always immediately. But that's the point. So every operator in this room already knows their audience patterns. We all know what time our older regulars come in. We know the blockbuster sweet spots. You know when kids show up and when they don't. And we've built that knowledge over years and years, and we act on it every single time we schedule a film or program an event. I know, for example, that 99% of Richmond seem to be retired, and they are never coming to a film at 8 o'clock at night. And I can't change that. But what we did start doing for us that was new is, without a real grand plan, we started asking the same questions about newer audiences that we hadn't asked before, but that we do with our current audience. What time works for them? What do they actually want to watch? And what does showing up look like for a different community? And that isn't just a community strategy, it's just programming. So what we're talking about in practice really is 2 different muscles, and both of them matter. So I'll talk about a few different audiences that we have at the station. Our core audience, as you've probably guessed, are elderly and retired, but we need to vary that. So one muscle is finding audiences that we've never had before. For us, that will be our Ukrainian community, neurodiverse screenings, and dog owners. These take a lot longer to build, and the return isn't always immediate. But the other is playing to an audience that you already have. So just some examples of what we do to boost existing areas of our audience is finding other partners who share that audience and do something together. Both of these use the exact same instinct. You ask first and you program second. And I'm going to come back to some of this in a little bit more detail, but that's the general shape of it. But let's look at some of these newer audiences. If we begin with dogs, And just to stress, we do not have the dogs watching films by themselves in the screen. There are humans with them. This is very confusing for some people to get behind. This started with a very simple observation. Everybody in Richmond seems to have a dog. And a lot of them complained that they couldn't come to the cinema because of it. So a few years ago, we just said, bring the dog, or the dogs. So we run these once or twice a month on a Sunday morning, which has historically been a really quiet morning for us. We weren't filling it with anything else. Now we have a loyal following of 50 or 60 guests per screening. The dogs all need a ticket. At Halloween, they have to come in a costume, but they do get a prize for the best one. And they get a present every Christmas because we host a dog Christmas party, and last year it was a doggy actually. I have to say the staff absolutely love it because they spend the first 20 minutes not doing any work and playing with the dogs in the foyer. There is a real feel-good factor around the building on those mornings, and it even extends to non-cinema guests that we have in the building. BBC News came in February to cover Woofing Heights, our dog-friendly screening of Wuthering Heights, and it further boosted our numbers. We've seen a lot of passive organic marketing. A local business recently bought their own dog and made a reel. It got over 9,000 likes, 4,500 shares, and hundreds of comments globally, and our next screening began to see instant sales as a result. Now, we didn't organize that. We didn't pay for it. It just happened because people loved what we were doing. And along with further radio coverage, we are seeing more and more people hearing about these dog screens, talking about it, and it's making us money. Money isn't a dirty word in this room. We need to make it. And we're building a really large dog audience every single month. We've even screened Doggy National Theatre, which honestly, I'm going to admit, started off as a really stupid marketing idea. But 10 dogs in bow ties watching National Theatre, it turns out people love that too. And as you can see, we even had a former Prime Minister visit a screening and he loved it as well. I'd really like to say we planned for that to happen as well, but we absolutely did not. But he seemed to enjoy himself, which seemed like a reasonable outcome for a Sunday morning. So here we have dead Sunday morning slots, a small idea, and now a loyal and growing monthly audience that we didn't have before. But if we look at some other audiences that we have, and we'll start with our food bank screenings that are really key to our community. These began because the team were quite shocked, as were I, to find out we had a food bank in Richmond. It's always seen as a very affluent area, and whilst there is some wealth there, it's not the whole picture, and the team wanted to do something about it. So we run 2 of these a year. We have Cans for Claus at Christmas, which is always a classic Christmas film, and we do one in the summer. We've had some terrible puns, such as Indy Canna Jones, Mary Popcans, and we're doing Shrek in the summer, but I'm really, really struggling to do something with that one. But the basic gist is audience brings in tins of food instead of buying a ticket. We ask local businesses to fund the costs, so there's no outlay on our part. All we do is host and provide a place to collect tins of food. Even my mom travels 2 hours from Sunderland to come and donate every single time. And over 3 years, we've donated more than 4,600 items of food. And last Christmas, we were so busy, we had to run the event twice in the same day. And the best bit isn't the screening. It's getting integrated with your local community. We go out to the food bank as a team and we help prepare the packages. We wrap Christmas hampers. We sort through the food. And if you want to know whether any of that is worth it, it absolutely is, because the community remembers and they come back to you tenfold. These screenings have grown us a really genuinely different audience to what we've seen before, and they have a huge spend per head on concession sales. The audience then cares about the work that you do, and they see there's a human element behind your cinema, and it costs you almost nothing, and it means everything to the people that need it most. Likewise, we've always won the French Film Festival. It came with a building, but we wanted to continue to grow that. So what we started to do was reach out directly in person to local tutors, to private lessons, to conversation groups, People who already existed in our local community, but we had no real connection with. Instant action audience. We saw simple growth by then approaching local restaurants. Luckily, we have a French restaurant in the middle of Richmond, and they have a captive audience of diners, and we have a captive audience of film lovers. So they show one of our tickets, they get a discount on their meal, and they're marketing for us. It's cost nothing on our side apart from a little bit of time and building a relationship. And now by building that relationship over a couple of years, we can confidently program more French titles and foreign language outside of that festival as well, because we know that audience are going to turn up, and we'll even take their suggestions on board as well. Our audience for foreign language films has grown consistently across the past 5 years because of this. And all we did was ask, they said yes, and that's the basic story. And we've had a lot of talk about social media this morning, but if we look at it not just as a marketing strategy, but as an audience development tool, it's really useful for younger audiences. We've begun to use videos to varying success. Unfortunately, last Christmas, we posted a video of a version of the Hugh Grant Love Actually dance, myself included. We saw 54,000 views on Facebook overnight, 20,000 views across TikTok, which I still don't understand how to use it, and for some reason it was really big in France. I'm going to take that as a win and try not to overthink it. What we saw was an overnight spike in bookings for our Love Actually screenings as a result, from a lot of people we found out who had never been to us before. The same thing happened with a very ill-advised Michael Jackson video in April. The bookings went up as soon as the video was posted. We've been able to track a direct uplift in ticket sales recently every single time we're posting authentic video content. It's putting us in front of people old and new, they share it with others, and it's translating directly to younger audience sales. 54,000 people seem to have watched me do a Hugh Grant dance. Many of them booked tickets, and now a lot of them are members because they've liked what they have seen on their visits. And all you had to do was look a little bit daft for 5 minutes on a video. But a key part of what we do to open up new audiences even further, which has been mentioned today, is making cinema an event. We don't just put films on, we make it something worth talking about. And we are seeing audiences travel from well outside our actual postcode specifically because of this. And this is a new audience strategy for us that's working, and it is actually growing our audience, especially with Gen Z and family audiences. For Wicked for Good, we had singers in costume in the foyer. For Harry Potter re-releases, we've done some themed meals and decorated the whole cinema. For Mario, the team did a live Mario Kart racing throughout the building. For Devil Wears Prada, we worked with a local fashion brand. We've hired mascot costumes to the delight of kids. We've held gaming events. We even dragged a choir in before sellout screenings for The Coral in November. And I can honestly tell you, people were actively booking to see the choir more than the film itself. I think the film was just an added bonus. But what we are getting now is people coming into the cinema and they are emailing us and they are asking, what are we going to do for X? What are we going to do for the next film that's coming up? We're building a reputation for it. It's bringing in younger audiences who wouldn't normally book with us. They are advertising it for us. They're reposting reels, they're sharing posts, they're adding comments, and this is organic, and it's just because they love what we do. And I want to be honest, I didn't come up with most of these ideas myself. The team does. Having a human Mario Kart race throughout the building was something I only actually found about when I saw it on social media. They didn't ask, they just did it because our culture allows it, and it translated to Mario ticket sales as soon as it was posted. So you don't always have to be the person with every single idea. You just have to create the conditions to allow ideas to happen, and then you have to figure out the how. And I don't think that's just marketing, it's culture. And the culture increases your ticket sales, which then increases your concession sales. It's all connected. So 2 examples of what this actually looks like in practice and where we've significantly grown new audiences. And I'm going to admit both of these started in the wrong place. Neurodiverse screenings, if I'm really honest, our first attempt was embarrassing. We found a quiet Tuesday afternoon slot that nobody wanted and thought that will do. it didn't. But sometimes you have to get it wrong before you can get it right. So we stopped, we redirected, and we started asking different questions. Why don't we actually go and speak to these people who need these screenings? What is it that they need? What does a good screening look like for this audience specifically? And what are the barriers? Is it time? Is it cost? Is it the film choice? Is it the environment? After reaching out directly, we found out if opening early on a Saturday morning for that group is what works, we're going to be there anyway, so let's just do it. We train the staff. We ensure that familiar faces are always in every time because feeling safe for these communities matter. We offer sensory bags and the freedom to move, but we work directly with the group leaders, the community groups, and the parents to see how we can best support these screenings and what they need from us. We now work with 3 or 4 groups across the area, and we schedule around them, not the other way around. Last year, we won an award for being the Neurodivergence Business of the Year, so I think we've had a pretty good turnaround. But something that surprised us recently, and I think this was touched on at the youth panel last year, adults have started requesting relaxed screenings as well. People who find the volume a little bit too loud or the screen's a little bit too busy. And I think there's a tendency to assume that neurodiverse screenings are just for families with young kids, but we see some of our regular groups are well into their 30s. We treat them like a regular, and we've built a relationship over time. Because I think we'd all agree that cinema should be enjoyed by everybody. So let's remove the barriers if we can. Schools is kind of the same story, but just a different audience. We were barely scratching the surface. A couple of school holiday shows we were happy with, and that was about it. So we started asking questions differently. What could we show throughout the year that maps directly to GCSE history or A-level English? What fits around the academic calendar? What can we find out from these groups? Shakespeare releases are enormous for us if the timing is right. And then it's about building relationships, not just locally. We get people coming from Yarm, Middlesbrough, Darlington, schools that are traveling 30 or 40 minutes past other cinemas to come to us because we are taking the time to build a relationship with them. We're seeing a rise in repeat bookings multiple times a year from the same schools. If you take part in the Interfilm Festival, that is a great way to start a relationship with a local school and turn it into not a transaction, but a relationship. We don't sell to them. We're asking them what works, what makes it easy, and then we stay in touch throughout the year. It might be you sit there and think, I don't really have the time for this. I don't think we feel we've got the time for it either. But you have to make the time or trust someone in your team to help do that for you. Both of these took a lot of patience, but neither of them cost a lot of money. They were both built on the same thing, which was asking first and programming second. So if we talk about the long game, which is our Ukrainian audience, it's a specific audience that we've grown over the past couple of years, and they've become a real key part of our cinema community. When the news broke in 2022, we saw a lot of settlers arriving in our area, and the team wanted to do something about it. So we put a few screenings on. Hollywood titles with subtitles and dubbing. It was something familiar, and it gave this audience a place to come together. But then we could no longer find any Hollywood dub content, so we adapted. We went out and sourced Ukrainian films ourselves, from animation, drama, things that we could find in their own language. We also worked with local refugee support groups to find out the best way to contact these people. And we also welcomed Syrian and Afghan visitors too, so not just Ukrainians. We thought very carefully about what would work for these families. The kids, we found out, largely understood English, so a Hollywood animation worked quite well for them. But we also wanted things for their parents and older teens that was in their own language. So what we were starting with was one screening that became a bigger piece of the puzzle. And then we saw the numbers fall off. A handful of people showing up, and I think it would have been very easy to give up at this point. But we kept asking the same questions that we would ask any audience. What time works for their community? What films would they actually like to see? And what does turning up actually look like for this group? And eventually, they came back to us, slowly, but they started to ask us to get specific films in. They started identifying titles they wanted to see. And it was a very slow trickle over 18 to 24 months. And then last winter, over 5 weeks in October, we saw demand for twice weekly screenings. They spent an absolute fortune on popcorn, £500, £600 at a time, and we found out they really loved Haribo. But it was also a younger audience, spending like you wouldn't believe on a slow Monday in October. So from this, they've now requested and are currently participating in monthly regular screenings. They've connected us with another group from further afield who have asked to do the same thing. And this has continued ever since October. Now we are starting to see some parts of this audience on a Friday night for the latest releases as well. That took us 3 years. But for me, it was worth every bit of effort. But what does it actually take? None of this required a big budget or a dedicated community team. What it required was just 4 things. Asking before programming, saying yes before you could see the return, patience, because sometimes we were measuring in months and years and not just weeks, and treating people like regulars before they'd earned that title. And the last one might sound a little bit strange, but I think it really matters. Both the Ukrainian community and the neurodiverse groups have become regulars, partly, I believe, because our team has treated them that way since day one. We've asked them what they wanted, and we've adapted to their needs. And we even showed up when they didn't for a while. And that's not complicated. It's just good hosting. And what good hosting has done commercially for us, because I think that's the point that everyone wants to know when we talk about community engagement, is we've seen our admissions rise, and in the last 3 years, we've seen our revenue per guest figures continue to rise year on year with this development. The new audiences that we are building aren't just filling seats, they're spending money, and they're feeling ownership, and they're bringing other people, and they keep coming back. So community engagement done properly isn't a cost, it's a commercial strategy. So if we come back to where we started, and that was we were talking about the effect of working within your community to bring in new audiences. In 2022, we just put a screening on because it felt like the right thing to do. We saw people arriving in our area, and we wanted to give them somewhere safe to go. We didn't have a plan, we had no idea if it would work, and we had no idea that it might take 3 years. But on a slow Monday last October, the community group came in, they booked multiple screenings at full price without any discount, and they spent a lot on popcorn and Haribo. And then they came back twice a week for the rest of the month, and they've referred other groups for us to do the same thing. And now they have a monthly fixture with no discount on tickets. And they are also coming back on weekends for Hollywood releases. That's not a community engagement strategy. It's 3 years of us saying yes, asking the right questions, and being patient. The efforts that my team have put in to grow neurodiverse groups, school visits, younger audience visits is coming back tenfold. And it's now why our audiences are spending more per head on every visit every year. It's why people are traveling past other cinemas to come directly to us. Everybody in this room already knows how to do this. Every instinct that we use to connect with our regular audience still applies here. You just have to be willing to start before you can see the return. Thank you.